Humiliated at her dream bridal appointment. Denied entry to a luxury Beverly Hills salon. Judged for her braids and thrifted blazer. And cruelly told, "Check the alley for your gown." Imagine the shock when Simone returns a month later, not just with her tech mogul fiancé, but renting the entire salon. Witness her stunning comeback as she confronts prejudice head-on, armed with talent, community, and a powerful vision that redefines luxury itself. Discover how resilience turns rejection into revolution. The air inside a club bridal hung thick and silent, scented with something expensive and vaguely floral, like lilies kept just shy of wilting. It was the kind of quiet that amplified small sounds. The rustle of silk, the click of a heel on marble, the frantic thumping of Simone Harper's own heart against her ribs. She stood just inside the imposing glass doors, a threshold that felt less like an entrance and more like a checkpoint. Beverly Hills sunlight streamed through the pristine windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air like tiny, privileged ghosts. Simone, 34 years old and armed with little more than fierce hope and a portfolio clutched too tightly in her hand, adjusted the shoulder pads of her thrifted blazer. It was a decent blazer, navy blue wool, maybe 80s vintage, but in this temple of ivory and champagne hues, it felt like sackcloth. Her only real armor, gleaming subtly against her dark skin, were the pearl earrings nestled in her lobes. They had belonged to her mother, who'd received them from her mother, heirlooms whispering tales of resilience passed down through generations of black women who knew how to make something beautiful out of almost nothing. Today, Simone hoped they'd lend her a fraction of their quiet strength. She had an appointment. She confirmed it twice, her voice betraying none of the tremor she felt now. Expelled Bridal. The name itself dripped exclusivity, a place whispered about in fashion blogs, featured in glossy magazines where brides floated like apparitions in gowns that cost more than Simone's entire student loan debt. It was the pinnacle, the place where design dreams were supposedly realized in clouds of tulle and hand-sewn crystals. And Simone, a designer whose hands knew the intimate language of fabric better than her own reflection, deserved to be here. Didn't she? A woman glided towards her from the depths of the salon, moving with the practiced serenity of someone accustomed to inhabiting spaces designed to intimidate. Mid-50s, rail-thin, dressed in an impeccably tailored black sheath dress that probably cost more than Simone's rent. Her silver blonde hair was swept into a chignon so tight it seemed to pull her features taut, giving her an expression of perpetual, faint disapproval. This had to be Genevieve Dubois, the senior consultant, the gatekeeper. Her name, like the salon's, sounded imported, expensive. Genevieve's eyes, the pale blue of a winter sky, did a swift, dismissive sweep. They snagged on Simone's intricate box braids, lingered for a fraction of a second too long on the thrifted blazer, and finally landed on the portfolio as if it were something contagious. A sigh escaped Genevieve's perfectly painted lips, a small puff of condescension in the lily-scented air. "Bonjour," she offered, the greeting clipped, the Parisian accent pronounced, perhaps deliberately so. "May I help you?" The pause was infinitesimal but loaded. Simone cleared her throat, the sound unnaturally loud in the stillness. "Yes, hello? I'm Simone Harper. I have a 10 o'clock appointment. To view the collections?" She held out a hand, a hopeful, naive gesture. Genevieve ignored the offered hand. Her gaze flickered towards a large, ornate clock on the wall, then back to Simone, her expression hardening from faint disapproval to undisguised disdain. "An appointment? You?" She tilted her head, a gesture that might have looked inquisitive on someone else, but on her, it felt like an interrogation under harsh lights. "Forgive me, mademoiselle, but Expelled Bridal caters to a specific clientele." She let the word hang there, freighted with unspoken qualifiers: wealthy, connected, white. Luxury clientele. "We specialize in couture, bespoke creations. Not for brides who are perhaps more suited to a DIY approach." The insult landed like a physical blow, sharp and stunning. DIY brides. The phrase conjured images of Pinterest boards and glue guns, a deliberate diminishment of Simone's artistry, her identity, her very presence in the space. Heat flooded Simone's cheeks. Her voice, when she found it, wavered despite her best efforts. "I assure you, I have an appointment. Simone Harper. 10 o'clock. I called last Tuesday." Genevieve's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was a small, tight smirk, a weapon honed through years of practice. Perhaps there was a misunderstanding. A crossed wire. She turned slightly, catching the eye of a burly security guard standing discreetly near an alcove draped in oyster-colored silk. He was dressed in a suit that looked borrowed, his presence a silent, heavy reinforcement of the salon's invisible walls. Genevieve gave him a subtle nod, a flick of her chin towards Simone. Then, turning back, her voice dropped to a stage whisper, loud enough for Simone and presumably the guard to hear clearly. Perhaps you might find something more appropriate down the street? Or, she added, her smirk widening into something truly ugly, check the alley entrance. Sometimes deliveries leave behind interesting scraps. The world tilted. The scent of lilies became cloying, suffocating. The marble floor felt suddenly unsteady beneath Simone's sensible flats. Humiliation washed over her, cold and sickening. This wasn't just a rejection. It was an expulsion, a public stripping of dignity performed with casual cruelty. The pearl earrings suddenly felt heavy, not anchors of strength but reminders of a vulnerability she couldn't afford. The security guard took a step forward, his expression impassive but his intention clear. There was no room for argument, no space for protest. Simone was trespassing not in a physical space but in a social one, a realm where her skin color, her presumed lack of wealth, rendered her invisible, or worse, offensive. She backed away, stumbling slightly as she turned. Her portfolio felt impossibly heavy now, filled not with designs but with the weight of this raw, bleeding rejection. She pushed through the heavy glass door, escaping the frigid quiet of the salon for the indifferent noise of Beverly Hills traffic. The California sun felt harsh, accusatory. Tears pricked at the corners of Simone's eyes, hot and angry. She wouldn't let them fall. Not here. Not now. She fumbled in her purse for her phone, her fingers trembling. She needed Kwame. His steadiness, his fire, his unwavering belief in her when the world tried to tell her she didn't belong. She leaned against the cool brick of the building next door, composing the text, each letter a tiny act of defiance against the crushing weight of Genevieve's dismissal. Kwame, she typed, her thumb hovering over the screen. Eclat. It was bad. Really bad. They basically threw me out. I need you. I need your help. She hit send. The small digital whoosh sounding like a desperate flare sent up into an uncaring sky. The pearl earrings seemed to pulse against her skin. A faint, rhythmic reminder. Resilience. Remember resilience. But right now, resilience felt miles away, obscured by the fresh, stinging wound of being told, unequivocally, that she was not enough. Detroit, 2012. The air wasn't scented with lilies, it smelled of hot metal from the pressing iron, chalk dust, and the comforting, earthy aroma of brewed coffee perpetually simmering on a hot plate in the back. Lorraine's Stitch and Soul boutique wasn't marble and glass, it was worn hardwood floors, walls covered in tacked-up sketches and fabric swatches, and racks overflowing with dreams taking shape in satin, lace, and determination. It was cramped, chaotic, and vibrantly alive. Simone, 10 years younger, her braids perhaps less intricate but her eyes just as bright, hunched over an industrial sewing machine, its rhythmic chugging a familiar heartbeat. Her fingers, nimble and sure, guided a cascade of ivory charmeuse under the needle, coaxing it into the graceful folds of a wedding gown skirt. This wasn't éclat couture, but it was artistry nonetheless, born from necessity and love. Her Aunt Lorraine, a woman whose presence filled the small shop far more than her physical size suggested, stood beside her, inspecting the seam Simone had just finished. Lorraine's hands, calloused from years of pinning, cutting, and stitching, gently smoothed the fabric. Her eyes, magnified by thick-rimmed glasses perched on her nose, held a wisdom that went beyond fashion. "See that, baby girl?" Lorraine murmured, her voice raspy, warm like her coffee. "Clean stitch. Strong stitch. Holds everything together even when the world tries to pull it apart." She tapped a finger on the seam. "We do more than sew dresses here, Simone. We stitch dignity back onto folks the world keeps trying to tear down." Lorraine's Stitch and Soul catered primarily to black brides. Women often overlooked, subtly dismissed, or outright rejected by the mainstream bridal salons in the wealthier suburbs. They came to Lorraine with magazine clippings featuring models who looked nothing like them. Their hopes tempered by past experiences of being shadowed in stores, quoted exorbitant prices, or told flatly that certain styles wouldn't be flattering on their bodies. In Lorraine's shop, they found refuge. They found understanding. They found Simone, who sketched designs that celebrated their curves, their heritage, their unique beauty. Simone learned fabrics not just by name, silk, tulle, organza, but by feel, by drape, by how they caught the light on different skin tones. She learned to listen, truly listen, to the stories behind the dresses, the grandmother who'd eloped because she couldn't afford a gown, the mother saving for years for her daughter's dream day, the bride wanting to incorporate a hint of Ankara print into her train as a nod to her roots. "Our hands," Lorraine would whisper, usually late at night when they were working against a deadline, the city lights painting patterns on the shop window. They mend what their eyes refuse to see. Remember that, Simone. Your needle is powerful. More powerful than their judgment. Simone absorbed it all, the technical skill, the business struggles, the profound connection forged with each client. She saw firsthand how systemic neglect starved Black businesses, how Lorraine poured her heart, soul, and dwindling savings into keeping the boutique afloat. They patched leaky pipes, haggled with fabric suppliers, offered layaway plans that sometimes stretched for years. They created beauty in the face of economic hardship, community in the face of indifference. But love and artistry couldn't always pay the escalating rent or compete with the online giants. The year Simone turned 25, Lorraine's Stitch and Soul finally closed its doors. The day they packed the last bolts of fabric, Lorraine pressed the pearl earrings into Simone's hand. Your grandma Ida wore these when she marched for voting rights, she'd said, her voice thick with emotion. Your mama wore them when she argued her first case in court. They're not just pretty, Simone. They're power. You wear them and remember where you come from and who you're fighting for. The closure felt like a death in the family. Detroit, grappling with its own economic ghosts, offered few prospects for a bespoke bridal designer. Armed with her portfolio, her sewing machine, and her aunt's legacy heavy on her heart, Simone moved to Los Angeles, chasing a sliver of the California dream. The reality was harsher than the brochure. LA was vast, impersonal, expensive. The fashion scene felt impenetrable, a fortress guarded by connections she didn't have. To survive, Simone swallowed her pride and took jobs cleaning sprawling mansions in the very hills that looked down, geographically and metaphorically, on the rest of the city. By day, she scrubbed floors and polished silver in homes owned by people who might one day, unknowingly, wear gowns designed by the woman cleaning their toilets. By night, fueled by cheap coffee and sheer will, she sketched. She draped fabric scraps over a battered mannequin salvaged from a thrift store. She built a website showcasing her designs, sending emails into the void, hoping for a single reply. Rejection became a familiar companion, polite emails, ignored calls, doors gently but firmly closed. The memory of Lorraine's shop, the warmth, the community, felt like a distant, aching dream. Then came the co-op. It was a small, shared workspace in Limert Park buzzing with the energy of Black entrepreneurs trying to build something from the ground up. There were graphic designers, caterers, app developers, writers, all pooling resources, sharing knowledge, offering encouragement. It felt like a tiny echo of Lorraine's Stitch and Soul, a pocket of resistance against the indifference of the larger city. That's where she met Kwame Adeyemi. He was intense, focused, with eyes that seemed to see right through pretense and a smile that could light up a room. He was usually hunched over a laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard, building an app designed to connect investors with Black-owned businesses, a digital bridge over the chasm of unequal access to capital. He was a Ghanaian immigrant carrying the weight and pride of his own heritage, driven by a fierce determination to build something lasting. Their connection wasn't instantaneous fireworks, it was a slow burn ignited over shared frustrations and dreams. He'd ask about her designs, genuinely curious about the structure of a corset or the drape of a particular silk. She'd listen, fascinated, as he explained algorithms and user interfaces, his passion for leveraging technology for social good infectious. Their first unofficial date happened late one night at the co-op. Simone was pinning muslin onto her mannequin, wrestling with a difficult bodice design. Kwame, taking a break from coding, watched her for a while, then quietly asked, "What story are you trying to tell with that fold?" No one had ever asked her that before. They talked for hours, surrounded by fabric swatches and coding screens, sharing stories of their journeys, his arrival in America with little more than a scholarship and a formidable intellect, her path from Detroit's fading industrial heart to the glittering, often hollow, promises of LA. He understood the feeling of being an outsider, the constant need to prove oneself, the weight of carrying the hopes of those who came before. He saw the artistry in her hands, the resilience in her spirit. She saw the brilliance in his mind, the integrity in his mission. Their love story unfolded organically, woven into the fabric of their ambitions. He became her fiercest advocate, her shrewdest advisor, her softest place to land. He celebrated her small victories, a commissioned prom dress, a positive blog mention, as if they were his own. When doubt crept in, fueled by the relentless stream of rejections, Kwame was the one who reminded her of Lorraine's words, of the power in her needle. He saw the éclat-level talent in her thrift store blazer reality. He was also, as his app gained traction and attracted serious investment, becoming quietly, extraordinarily successful. A tech mogul in the making, though he rarely spoke of it in those terms. He saw his wealth not as an end goal, but as a tool, a resource to be reinvested in the communities that nurtured him. When he proposed, it wasn't with a grand gesture, but with a quiet intensity that mirrored their connection. He presented her not with a diamond ring initially, but with a single, perfect pearl, a companion to her mother's earrings. To remind you, he'd said, his voice thick with emotion, that your value is inherent, luminous, and stronger than any rejection. The eclat appointment had been Simone's idea. A step, she'd thought, towards claiming her place in the industry, towards seeing her own potential reflected in the hallowed halls of haute couture. Kwame had been supportive, though she'd sensed a flicker of concern in his eyes, a premonition perhaps of the very dismissal she had just endured. Now, standing outside the salon, the sting of Genevieve's words still fresh, Simone felt the full weight of that journey, the ghosts of Detroit, the lonely LA nights, the defiant hope nurtured in the co-op, the unwavering strength of Kwame's love. The rejection wasn't just about a dress, it was about everything that had led her to this moment. It was about Lorraine's legacy, about every black woman told she didn't belong. Kwame's reply buzzed on her phone almost instantly. "Stay put. I'm on my way. And Simone, we're not just getting you help. We're going to change the whole damn game." A small, fierce smile touched Simone's lips. The tears retreated. The pearl earrings felt warm against her skin now, radiating not just history, but a promise. The stitch, she thought, recalling Aunt Lorraine's words. The strong stitch holds. 1 month later. The Beverly Hills sun slanted through the same pristine windows of Eclat Bridal, but the atmosphere inside was electric, unrecognizable. The oppressive quiet was gone, replaced by a low, expectant buzz. The air still smelled expensive, but now it mingled with the vibrant sense of shea butter, coconut oil, and the collective perfume of dozens of confident women. Kwame Adeyemi had rented the entire salon for the day. Not for a private viewing, but for an event. Genevieve Dubois stood near the entrance, her usual composure fractured. Her face was pale beneath her meticulous makeup, her silver-blonde chignon seeming less severe and more frayed. Her pale blue eyes darted nervously around the room, taking in the scene with a dawning horror that was almost palpable. The salon wasn't filled with the usual clientele. Instead, elegant black models, dressed in stunning gowns of Simone's design, gowns that blended traditional African textiles with classic European silhouettes, posed languidly on the plush settees and near the mirrored pedestals. Journalists, black and brown faces prominent among them, adjusted microphones and cameras, their expressions keen, sensing a story. Mingling among them were women Simone recognized instantly, her former clients from Detroit, flown in first class, their faces alight with pride and vindication. And buzzing through the crowd, phone held high, live streaming the entire event, was Lila Park, a prominent fashion and culture blogger known for her sharp eye and sharper commentary on industry inequities. The guest list was a curated masterpiece of defiance. Genevieve kept smoothing down her black sheath dress, her hands trembling slightly. She tried to object, of course, when Kwame's assistant had made the booking, citing salon policy, exclusivity, the sheer unsuitability of such a gathering. But Kwame hadn't just rented the space. He'd made a donation to the parent company's chosen charity, a donation so significant it had silenced all objections from corporate headquarters. Genevieve was trapped, forced to host the very element she had so viciously sought to exclude. Then the main doors opened and a hush fell over the room. Simone Harper entered. She wasn't wearing a thrifted blazer this time. She wore a gown of her own creation, a masterpiece that commanded attention not through ostentation, but through sheer, breathtaking artistry. The bodice was sculpted from rich, crimson Kent cloth, its intricate geometric patterns telling stories centuries old. The vibrant Ghanaian textile flowed seamlessly into a dramatic skirt of delicate, ivory French lace, hand-beaded with tiny, glittering obsidian crystals. It was a fusion, a conversation between cultures, a bold declaration of identity. On her feet were elegant heels, and in her ears, gleaming against her skin, were her mother's pearl earrings. She moved with a quiet confidence that radiated power, her eyes sweeping the room, calm and steady. Kwame was beside her, his hand protectively, proudly, on the small of her back. He wore a bespoke suit tailored from Ghanaian smock fabric, a subtle echo of her gown. They were a portrait of modern black excellence, regal and unapologetic. Genevieve seemed to shrink, her pallor intensifying. She looked from Simone's gown, a creation more innovative and exquisitely crafted than anything currently hanging on Eclat's racks, to Simone's face, searching perhaps for a flicker of the uncertainty she'd seen a month ago. She found none. Simone walked directly towards Genevieve, the rustle of Kent and lace the only sound in the suddenly silent room. She stopped a few feet away, her gaze level. "Bonjour," Genevieve, Simone said, her voice clear, resonant, carrying easily through the space. There was no anger in her tone, only a profound, unshakable certainty. I believe you cater to luxury clientele? Genevieve swallowed hard. Miss Harper. There seems to have been a terrible misunderstanding last time. Her accent sounded thinner now, less a mark of sophistication and more a flimsy shield. Oh, I don't think there was any misunderstanding at all, Simone replied, her voice gentle but firm. You made your criteria quite clear. What you failed to understand, she gestured around the room, encompassing the models, the journalists, the community she had brought with her, is that this is luxury too. Luxury is heritage. Luxury is craftsmanship. Luxury is resilience. Luxury is community. Luxury, her eyes met Genevieve's directly, is refusing to be defined by someone else's narrow, exclusionary standards. Lila Park's phone captured it all, broadcasting Simone's words live to thousands of viewers. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Kwame stepped forward then, his presence commanding. He addressed the assembled journalists, his voice ringing with passion. Simone Harper is one of the most talented designers working today. Her vision, her artistry deserves a global stage. But for too long, designers of color, entrepreneurs from marginalized communities have been denied access, judged not on their merit but on their background, their appearance, the texture of their hair. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Today, Simone and I are announcing the launch of the Adeyemi Harper Foundation for Bridal Equity. We are seeding it with an initial investment of $10 million. A collective gasp went through the room. $10 million. This fund, Kwame continued, his gaze sweeping over the stunned faces, including Genevieve's utterly dumbfounded one, will provide grants, mentorship, and resources for minority-owned bridal businesses. It will support designers, seamstresses, event planners, photographers, artisans who, like Simone, have faced systemic barriers, who have been told their definition of beauty, their expression of luxury, is somehow less valid. He turned to Simone, his eyes softening with love and pride. We believe that every bride deserves to feel seen, celebrated, and adorned in a way that honors her heritage and her dreams. And we believe the artists who make those dreams possible deserve to thrive. The room erupted in applause, a wave of joyous, affirming sound washing over the sterile elegance of the salon. Models beamed, journalists scribbled furiously. Simone's former clients wiped tears from their eyes. Genevieve stood frozen, utterly eclipsed. The carefully constructed world of éclat, built on exclusion and snobbery, seemed to crumble around her. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Finally, she stammered, Miss Harper, Mr. Adeyemi, I apologize. Truly, I was unprofessional. The words failed her. Simone regarded her for a long moment. Then, reaching into the small, elegant clutch that matched her gown, she pulled out a simple, crisp business card. She held it out to Genevieve. Confused, Genevieve took it. The card read, Simone Harper Designs, Atelier and Community Collective. Below the title, in smaller print, Weaving Dreams, Stitching Futures. Our foundation will be offering grants for businesses committed to diversity and inclusion, Simone said, her voice even. That includes funding for comprehensive sensitivity training and bias awareness programs. She looked pointedly at Genevieve. Perhaps éclat could benefit. You can submit an application. Her eyes held Genevieve's gaze. We'll review it carefully. And we will decide if you qualify. The power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. The woman who had dismissed Simone, who had relegated her to the alley, was now implicitly asking for acceptance, for a chance at redemption from the very person she had scorned. Genevieve could only nod, the business card trembling in her hand. Simone turned away from her then, towards the warmth and celebration of the crowd, towards the future she and Kwame were building. She caught the eye of one of her former Detroit clients, a woman whose wedding dress she'd sewn years ago in Lorraine's small shop. The woman raised her glass in a silent toast, her smile radiant. The pearl earrings felt light now, like promises fulfilled. The Kent cloth against her skin felt like ancestral armor, the lace like a future woven with intricate possibility. This wasn't just a return, it was a reclamation. A reclaiming of space, of narrative, of the very definition of luxury itself. 6 months melted into a California autumn, the crisp air carrying the scent of change. The imposing facade of éclat bridal faded into a sharp, unpleasant memory replaced by the vibrant energy of Harper House. It wasn't located in Beverly Hills, but nestled in the heart of Inglewood, housed in a lovingly restored community center building that pulsed with life. This was Simone's new atelier, but it was more than that. It was a collective, a hub, a living tribute to Aunt Lorraine's stitch and soul. Sunlight, unfiltered and welcoming, streamed through large windows, illuminating walls adorned not with price tags, but with student sketches, mood boards celebrating diverse cultures, and bolts of fabric in every conceivable color and texture. Dutch wax prints jostling happily with Italian silks, Indian brocades shimmering next to American milled cotton. The main space served as Simone's design studio and showroom, where brides of all backgrounds, shapes, and budgets were welcomed with genuine warmth. But the heart of Harper House beat strongest in the adjoining workshop. Here, sewing machines hummed, laughter mingled with the snip of scissors, and teenagers from the local community gathered after school for free design and sewing workshops. Simone, often joined by Kwame when he could tear himself away from the foundation's burgeoning work, moved among them, offering guidance, encouragement, and the same patient instruction Lorraine had once given her. They were learning pattern making, draping, embroidery, tangible skills wrapped in the intangible lessons of self-worth and creative expression. And among the volunteers quietly sorting fabric scraps or helping a struggling student thread a needle was Genevieve Dubois. Her journey hadn't been easy. After the disastrous event at Expelled, her position had become untenable. The story, amplified by Lila Park's viral livestream and subsequent articles, had cast a harsh spotlight on the exclusionary practices rife within the luxury market. Expelled, facing a PR nightmare, had quietly let her go. Adrift and humbled, Genevieve had surprised everyone, perhaps even herself, by applying for the sensitivity training funded by the Adeyemi Harper Foundation. She'd attended every session, listened intently, and, according to the facilitators, shown a genuine, if sometimes clumsy, effort to understand her own biases. Afterwards, she'd approached Simone, not asking for a job, but asking if she could volunteer. Simone, after careful consideration and a long conversation with Kwame, had agreed, albeit with cautious optimism. Redemption wasn't a switch to be flipped, but a path to be walked. One quiet afternoon, as they were organizing donated lace trims, Genevieve paused, her hands still. "I used to believe that exclusivity was the same thing as prestige," she confessed, her voice low, stripped of its former affectation. She looked at Simone, her pale eyes holding a flicker of shame, but also something new, a dawning awareness. That keeping people out somehow made what was inside more valuable. "I measured worth by price tags and pedigrees." She sighed, a genuine sound this time. "I was so wrong. So profoundly, damagingly wrong. Value, it's in the skill, the story, the heart. It's in this." She gestured around the vibrant workshop at the young faces bent over their projects, their brows furrowed in concentration. "Creating access, not barriers." Simone simply nodded, acknowledging the truth in Genevieve's words, allowing her the space to articulate her changed perspective. Healing, like weaving, took time and patience. The official launch party for Harper House and the community workshop was a joyous affair. The space overflowed with people, community leaders, local artists, foundation grant recipients, proud parents, and the excited teenagers showcasing their first completed projects. Music pulsed, delicious aromas wafted from a catering station run by another Black-owned business funded by the foundation, and the air buzzed with connection and celebration. Kwame, beaming, pulled Simone aside for a moment. He pressed a small, cloth-wrapped object into her hand. "I saved this," he murmured. "From that first night we really talked at the co-op, remember?" Simone unwrapped it carefully. It was a small scrap of muslin, slightly yellowed with age, the kind she used for draping prototypes. But embroidered onto it, in neat, crimson stitches, her signature color, were 4 words: "Our threads, our thrones." Tears welled in Simone's eyes. It was a piece of her past, a tangible link to those nights of struggle and dreaming, now elevated, enshrined. A reminder that humble beginnings weren't something to be ashamed of, but the very foundation upon which empires of creativity, of community, of love were built. She clutched it tightly, the coarse fabric a grounding presence. Later, amidst the joyful chaos, a young girl approached Simone hesitantly. She was maybe 12, with bright, intelligent eyes and hair adorned with colorful beads, a recent immigrant from Haiti, Simone knew, who had thrown herself into the workshops with fierce passion. She held up a sketchbook open to a drawing of a wedding gown. It was imaginative, bold, featuring asymmetrical lines and vibrant embroidered details inspired by Haitian Veuve symbols. "Miss Simone," the girl said shyly, her accent lyrical. "I designed this. See?" She pointed to the side of the skirt. "It has pockets." Simone smiled. "Pockets are very practical. What would you carry in them?" The girl's face lit up. "Dreams," she whispered earnestly. "For carrying dreams." A wave of emotion washed over Simone, so strong it momentarily stole her breath. She knelt down, meeting the girl's eyes. The pearl earrings, her mother's legacy, felt like warm blessings against her skin. She thought of Lorraine, of the cramped Detroit shop, of the countless dreams stitched into seams under her aunt's watchful eye. "Aunt Lorraine would have loved you," Simone whispered, her voice thick. "She would have loved your pockets full of dreams." She looked around the room, at Kwame, her partner in love and legacy. At the diverse faces alight with possibility. At Genevieve, tentatively finding her place in this new tapestry. At the young Haitian girl clutching her sketchbook like a scepter. She thought of the Kent and lace gown, a symbol of bridging worlds, of honoring roots while reaching for the future. The final line resonated in her soul, clear and true, a culmination of every rejection, every stitch, every triumph, every connection made along the way. True elegance isn't worn, it's woven, stitch by defiant stitch, into the tapestry of those who come next. Grateful you joined Simone's journey. Hope her story of resilience and triumph brought you inspiration. Want more powerful narratives like this? Help spread the message. Please like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss what's next.